Halftime show, Terry Ford, and Terry Ford. You're on the game. Thanks for hanging out with us. Whether you're just listening the old-fashioned way, 107.5 The Game in Columbia, 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach, 100.5 The Game in Florence, or maybe you're on our 107.5 The Game app. Whether you picked it up on iTunes or Apple apps or wherever you get it these days, or Google Play. Maybe you're listening on your computer, your device, or you're watching us on the Game TV, powered by Integrated Media and sponsored by Shepherd's Glass. Thank you very much. It's football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. We'll get to you if you're on hold here in just a minute, 803-404-6100 on the Love Chevy phone line. Obviously, our Firehouse Subtext the Hour coming up later. Also, 803-404-6100. South Carolina, Illinois, Citrus Bowl, New Year's Eve, 3 o'clock kick. We start everything here locally at 107.5 The Game in Columbia with Gamecocks Game Day, myself, Tyler Head. And we'll talk to some guy named Elijah Campbell who will be in Orlando at the Citrus Bowl covering it for us. So that is coming up. Like I said, 10 a.m. Network will jump in at noon. That's when our affiliate in Myrtle Beach will also join the party. At 100.3, the game kickoff at 3 o'clock. Brett Bielema, the head coach at Illinois, was asked about his initial thoughts on taking on South Carolina in the Citrus Bowl. And here's what Bielema had to say. I promise.
Super excited for them. About our opponent, I just literally called Coach Beamer before I came down here, reached out to him and congratulated on an incredible season for them. They've won 6 straight, right? They lost a heartbreaker against Alabama, and then have won 6 straight games against really good opponents to play. I've been in that league. I know what it's all about. Just congratulations to South Carolina, their fan base, their players, obviously a really strong tradition. I'm really excited. I don't know Coach Beamer well. I've known him through the profession just a little bit here, but just coaches that have worked with him, places he's been, and just stands for all the right things in college football, I believe, as well. So super excited about the matchup. For me, it's kind of a unique opportunity. My first ever bowl game as a head coach was against the University of Arkansas, and it's a very game that we won and gave us 12 wins at Wisconsin when I was there, and that set the program record for wins. So to have a chance to tie that here at Illinois with a 10 win would be absolutely awesome.
All right, so Illinois under Brett Bielema this year, 9-3 overall, 6-3 in the Big Ten, but they only outscored their opponents in conference games by 10 points, which is kind of interesting. So they won some close games in the league. Their non-conference, they had Eastern Illinois, Kansas when Kansas was ranked. That was a good win at the time for Illinois, a 23-17 W against Kansas, and they beat Central Michigan. Like I said, played a lot of one-score games, beat Arkansas by 7. Only beat Purdue by 1, and Purdue was awful. Beat Purdue by 1. Did take out Michigan by 2 scores, 21-7. Beat Michigan State easily by 22. Survived Rutgers by 7. Remember, that game was kooky. And then beat Northwestern by 10 in the Big Ten. So we'll dig more into Illinois as we go, but there's Brett Bielema's initial thoughts on taking on South Carolina in the Citrus Bowl on New Year's Eve. All right, Mike Shula, from everything we're hearing, will be the new offensive coordinator at South Carolina, waiting for the official. I like it. It keeps continuity going. Shula's got a ton of experience. He's worked with dual-threat type quarterbacks in his career. We'll see how it goes, but I feel like this was the right way to take this if you're Shane Beamer. And just keep the continuity. Shula has a good relationship with Lenore Sellers. Obviously, the guy's been a coordinator, been a play caller, been a quarterback coach, all these things. So I think it was, to me, the right way to go. All right, 803-404-6100. Let's get Trey in here. Trey, thanks for holding. You're on the halftime show on the game. Appreciate your patience. What's up?
Yeah, Terry Ford, how you doing, buddy?
So far, so good. I haven't screwed anything up yet. I'm doing all right, but give me time.
No,
give me time.
You're doing great, buddy. You're doing great. Terry, I just got a couple things, man. So I'm an Alabama and South Carolina graduate, so I'm very familiar with Mike Shula. I think it's a good hire. I agree with consistency and Lenore Sellers and him working with Cam Newton, Josh Allen, et cetera. My only complaint about Mike Shula, just watching him over the years, is how conservative he gets. I know when I was watching him at Alabama, it was 30 wedge, pass, punt in a lot of situations. So that's the only thing with Mike Shula.
Mm-hmm.
He will get super conservative. That's my only gripe on this.
No, I get you, and I appreciate the insight on him, Trey, being a Bama guy. Yeah, I mean, that's where you hope the evolution is with Mike Shula. And because Mike Bobo has evolved, if you see what George is like now and see what Bobo used to be like, Bobo isn't as conservative as he used to be. Not to say he's not Dan Campbell, but, he has kind of evolved and less conservative as a play caller. Look, Kirby Smart's less conservative as a head coach. And a lot of times you get your marching orders from the head coach, especially defensive-minded head coaches. Shane's aggressive and pushes aggressiveness. And so hopefully that gives Mike Shula more freedom to feel he can be aggressive, and hopefully Mike's evolving as years have gone on to realize how you called plays in 98 or 2002 or whatever it is isn't the way to go about it now. It's a more aggressive game, a more wide-open game, a more high-scoring game. Field goals get you beat today. I mean, they're better than nothing, but you're kicking too many field goals, you're losing games. You got to be more aggressive today. But I appreciate the call, Trey. Again, good insight on Mike Shula. All right, let's keep going. Our buddy Tim has been holding on. Tim, thanks for hanging. You're on the halftime show on the game. How you doing, pal?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing all right so far. What do you got for me, my friend?
Listen, just for my part, I mean, I got younger from 31 down to 14, and we talk football, look at football, and all this and other all the time. And for my part, I'm glad Loggins is gone myself, because I think they done what they done because of Norris Sellers and all this and that. The play was blowed up a lot of times, and he made something happen. So I thought when Sellers got hurt, I'm old and can't remember everything. Who was they playing? LSU when Sellers got hurt?
Yep.
It didn't play second half? Okay. All right. Me and my boys talked about it. Loggins was calling plays not to lose instead of still calling plays to win. As soon as Ashford come in, they ate it. It was like he said, I ain't going to let him throw it. You know what I mean? It was just, I'm glad he's gone. I'm ready to see something else. I really am.
I appreciate you, Tim. Thank you, my friend. I get you. And look, where Tim's going with Loggins, Dow was a mixed bag when it came to play calling. There were times I was like, huh? As I was being my own offensive coordinator from the comfort of O'Hara's or the man cave I have in my palatial, mansion. So I know where Tim's going. I mean, sometimes, Dow, you were just, the play calling kind of made you scratch your head a bit. And Tim makes a great point. We talked about this after the Clemson game. And I was like, look, no, I'm not trying to be mean or disrespectful to, anyone, and not saying Dow Loggins hasn't gotten much better as a play caller as this year has gone along. But the Clemson game offensively, that wasn't great play calling or a great offensive system or great scheming. That was Lenora Sellers going, oh, bleep, they're going to knock me. They're going to knock the crap out of me. I got to get out of the pocket and go make a play. That was Lenora Sellers, the playmaker. Or like we were talking about that Monday after the Clemson game, South Carolina's dude on offense was better than Clemson's dudes on defense. That's really what happened. So to Tim's point, yeah, there have been times it hasn't been great play calling or great scheming or a great system. It's just your dude with the ball in his hand beat the other guy's dudes. So I get there were people who liked Dow, people who didn't, people who thought, he's okay. I mean, I think we all can agree it was better. Dow Loggins was better than Marcus Satterfield. If you want to say, yeah, Tara, low bar. Okay. Won't argue. I never understood the rhyme or reason of Marcus Satterfield's play calling. I thought everything was too complicated, too complex. There was too much for those guys to learn. Dow simplified a lot of it. And remember, 2 years ago, to be fair, it would be hard for anyone to be a great play caller or offensive coordinator when your offensive line was bad as South Carolina's O-line was 2 years ago. Just being fair. That O-line was a mess. And we talked to Loggins at Birdies with Beamer, and we asked him on the show about, how much, with the issues you have with the offensive line, how much did that limit you as, a schemer for offense, a play caller, on game day? And he's like, yeah, it limited you because there are things you couldn't do. He always had to leave a tight end in the block, or he made sure backs were chipping pass rushers, or you couldn't get any push in the run game or any holes open in the run game. So to be fair, 2 years ago, it was tough to really put a grade on Dow Loggins, the offensive coordinator or play caller, because of what was going on with the offensive line. This past year, you had a better gauge, and it was more fair to start judging the offense and the play calling. I get it. I do. I thought Dow got better after the bye week. I thought the entire offense got better. I think you had a chance to self-scout that second bye week and figure out some things. Sellers was very healthy. Rocket Sanders was healthy. And you started seeing some progression of the wide receivers and making plays in the Missouri game and obviously in the Wofford game. So I thought everything was getting better as the year flowed along for Dow and for the offense as a whole. But I get where Tim's going. Yeah, I mean, the Clemson game again was just Lenore Sellers making plays, taking off, running for his life, and making stuff happen. 803-404-6100. You want to jump on the Love Chevy phone line or the Firehouse Sub text line? Feel free to give us your thoughts on Mike Shula, the new OC. Anything, South Carolina, feel free. We're doing football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. The season's over. We haven't had a chance to do this yet because everything's been crazy, right? We're talking about offensive coordinators. We're talking about, Nagurski Awards. We're discussing college football playoff positioning, bowl games. We haven't had a chance to go back and look actually at the season that just finished, the regular season for South Carolina. We've been giving you the Pro Football Focus grades every week. We haven't had a chance to do the final season-ending Pro Football Focus grades. We're going to get into those, starting with the offense next. What do you say? It's a halftime show. Terry Ford, glad you could be hanging out with us as we roll this puppy up until 3 here on The Game. Halftime show. Terry Ford Ledge going to be hanging out with us as we go till 3 here on the game. Tonight, Carolina calls Lamont Paris and Derek Scott at 6. Next Wednesday, a special Citrus Bowl version of Carolina calls with Shane Beamer and Todd Ellis. So tonight, Lamont Paris, Derek Scott. Next Wednesday, Shane Beamer, Todd Ellis. That's what's happening with Carolina calls. All right, we're doing football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the game. Speaking of Shane Beamer, Shane talking to the media Sunday night, his Citrus Bowl presser, after it was announced that South Carolina and Illinois would go at it in Orlando. Here's Shane talking about a lot of the obvious advantages of playing in a bowl game.
I don't want this to come across the wrong way that, man, I'm glad we didn't get in the playoff but in some ways, the playoff's tough. And I've said it in here before, or somebody asked me on an interview, may not have been in here, about the playoff. And the one thing that I didn't like about the playoff is if you play a first-round game and you lose, your season's over. And there is no bowl game. And the playoff, as great a town as South Bend, Indiana is, the University of, is not going to South Bend to spend 4 days in South Bend on like a bowl trip. And who's playing Penn State? SMU. SMU is not going to go spend a week in State College and go visit Hershey, PA, and see like the chocolate factory and stuff. And bowl games are special. And the fact that we get to, and again, this isn't Shane saying, man, I'm glad I'm not in the bowl game because I get to do this. In a playoff. We would have loved to have been in a playoff, but the opportunity that we get to go spend a week in Orlando, we'll go down there on the 26th, I think is when we arrive. So we got a week there together as a team, and our players and our coaches' families getting to experience all the amazing things there in Orlando or whatnot is an awesome opportunity that our players are really looking forward to. And that's why so many guys were looking forward to hopefully this game working out.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago you go to the Gator Bowl, and it's no offense to the Gator Bowl or Jacksonville, but you want to do something different this time. And to have the Citrus Bowl want you and invite you and pick you to come to Orlando, that's fantastic. And the fact that maybe you can bring back some Cheez-Its for the rest of us would be really cool. But at the end of the day, it's just an experience and it's a great experience and a chance to post 10 wins for only the fifth time in school history. So there's Shane talking about the advantages of the bowl game. All right, football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the game. We have not had a chance to go over the Pro Football Focus grades for the end of the regular season at South Carolina with the Gamecocks. Just the overall numbers. Starting with the offensive side of the ball, overall grade. By the way, the highest grade on the team, if I believe, was Kai Kroger at 89.2. Kai Kroger had a heck of a year, man. He really did. Let me make sure I got that right. Yeah. Kai Kroger had the best Pro Football Focus grade on the squad. You're saying, wow, Tara, the punter? That punter was one of the best punters in America. Kai Kroger totally bounced back from an off Kai Kroger year last season and just had a phenomenal 2024. The second highest rated player, Rocket Sanders at 79.9. So really the full-time offensive player had the highest grade, Rocket Sanders, 79.9. The only thing that dinged Rocket Sanders was his pass blocking grade was only 37. But overall, Sanders is 79.9, the best offensive grade on the team. Dale Von Campbell came on like gangbusters at the end of the year, ended up with a grade of 79.1. Maurice Brown, who was hurt, unfortunately, for about 4 games, then at 74.4. Lenora Sellers came in 8th at 73.2 overall grade, which is good. Pass grade was a little under 70. Run grade was over 70. Got better as the year progressed. So Lenora Sellers sitting at 8. The top-rated offensive lineman was Torricelli Simpkins at 69.4, just under 70 for the season. So Simpkins had the best grade of the offensive line. Vershawn Lee was second at 67.5. Obviously, as a freshman, Josiah Thompson struggled. It really didn't surprise anyone. He had a tough go as a freshman. He had the lowest grade on the offensive line. Then Cason Henry was a little bit ahead of Josiah Thompson, and Kamar Bell was third. So that's where the offensive line broke down. By the way, snaps. The starting offensive linemen were all over 700 snaps, if my memory serves me. So remember, 2 years ago, you couldn't keep an offensive lineman healthy on the field. This past year, Josiah Thompson was hurt a bit, but besides that, the other four pretty much were playing every game and all game. So that's obviously a welcome relief after what happened the year before. So that's why the offense broke itself down. Defensively, I mean, there's good numbers here. O'Donnell Fortune had the best overall defensive number at 85. Now remember, if you get above 60, 60 is the cutoff point for pass fail. If you're above 60, it means you were solid. Under 60 means you were below average. O'Donnell Fortune at 85 had the best overall defensive grade. Bengali Kamara, it's a shame Kamara left. I got why, but Bengali Kamara had the second best defensive grade on the team, had the best run defensive grade on the squad at almost 90. But TJ Sanders was second behind O'Donnell Fortune at 83.7. Demetrius Knight, 83.7. So there's a tie between Sanders and Knight. Nick Eamon-Wari also over 80 at 81.5. Dylan Stewart, 80.1. Of course, Dylan Stewart, one of the best pass rush grades in the country coming off the edge. You have to drop down a little bit because Kyle Kennard wins in Nagurski, only the 11th best grade on the defense. That's how good the defense was. Because Kyle Kennard's grade, 76.6, is really good. And Kennard, those last few games of the year, had some lower grades. But for most of the year, Kyle Kennard was phenomenal, obviously. Bam Martin Scott, almost an 80 grade. So really, if you take away the guys who only played a little bit, Kyle Kennard was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7th on the defense. Brian Thomas finished behind Kennard a little bit with a 74.7, playing over 250 snaps. The struggle, because not many guys on the defense really struggled at all. The lowest grade of regular defenders, Tonka Hemingway's grade was 66.6, which was above average. But that's the point of how good this defense was. Bakari Swain was 64.4 in his first year of playing time, but again, that's above average as well. Alex Huntley also above average at 62.5. So all those grades are above average, even though they're when you look at the defense, they're ranked at the bottom of the defensive grades for South Carolina, but they're all above average. So again, that's how good the D was. Excellent defensive year, obviously, for South Carolina. And DQ Smith got better. Look, DQ Smith struggled early in the year, and we talked about his struggles. But DQ Smith got better as the year went on and ended the season at 71.1, which really nice work by DQ Smith when you look at how far he came to get to that grade. Because, again, beginning of the year, DQ Smith had some tough go. So good for DQ. All right, that's some of the Pro Football Focus grades for South Carolina when it comes to total offensive and defensive grades. And as the week moves itself on, we'll try to zone in on some specific stuff. But that's just the basic overall grades on offense and defense. All right, football in the 1 o'clock hour. Terry Ford, glad you could be hanging out. Okay, we got some things. We got this stuff with the Eagles that's going on. Nick Sirianni, the head coach, his thoughts on the Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown nonsense. And there's a kooky thing with Mark Gastineau. Used to be the single-season sack leader. Michael Strahan beat his record years ago. Brett Favre was the quarterback who got sacked by Michael Strahan. Mark Gastineau not happy with Brett Favre because he got sacked by Michael Strahan. We'll get into that kooky story, too. It's football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Terry Ford, appreciate you just sitting around with us as we go till 3 here on the game. What we're talking about, a lot of South Carolina stuff, obviously. We just went over some Pro Football Focus grades for the season for the Gamecocks. Transfer portal season is here. Much to the happiness of Lane Kiffin, how the calendar's set up. Look, I get Lane. I do. It's ridiculous. December is ridiculous and asinine in the world of college football. It is. You got college football playoff. You got bowl games. You've got transfer portal. You've got early signing period. It makes no sense. You got, by the way, coaches leaving for other jobs, coaches getting hired, coaches getting fired, coordinator searches. You got all. It's insane. And Lane makes an interesting analogy, and he's not wrong. This is like having the playoffs in the NFL, and right before, a week or two before your playoff game, your quarterback goes into the transfer portal. Makes no sense. And yeah, none of the college football playoff quarterbacks are leaving to go in the portal, starters. But like Malik Murphy leaving Duke. Yeah, Duke has really no one to step up and start as quarterback. Right before a bowl game, which is coming up here soon. It makes no sense. But there's more to it than just the easy surface. This is dumb, because it is. You've got, students taking exams. You've got other things going on regarding the actual university. I know we forget that these are college students, too. They got to stay eligible. But so it's a deeper dive than just, this makes no sense, because it doesn't make any sense. But that calendar somehow has to get tweaked and fixed. But in the meantime, it still is transfer portal season. Gamecock Central is a really cool transfer watch list, transfer portal target watch list for South Carolina. We went over a little bit yesterday. Gunnar Hansen, offensive lineman from Vandy, is going to make a visit to South Carolina. A lot of teams are interested in Hansen, the Vandy offensive lineman, but he will make a visit to Columbia. Josh Thompson also lining up a visit to South Carolina. And he's an offensive lineman from Northwestern, 1 year of eligibility left. Hansen also 1 year of eligibility left from Vandy. Thompson, man, he's going to make the tour. My man's going to take advantage of being in the portal. South Carolina, Michigan State, Auburn, Ohio State. Then, before it's all said and done, possibly Michigan, Tennessee, and we said he will come to South Carolina. Interesting name in the portal. Gamecock Central is monitoring Andrew Jones, linebacker from Grambling. According to GC, South Carolina appears to be in the mix. Jones actually made a post on Twitter X on Monday saying the Gamecocks had offered, but he has since deleted that. So we don't know what that's about. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Who knows? We'll find out. Good year statistically. Now, again, you're going to make the leap from Grambling to South Carolina in the SEC, but really good numbers. Co-defensive player of the year in the SWAC with 122 tackles, 20.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks amongst his numbers. So a very interesting guy to keep your eye on. Another one we haven't talked about yet is Chasen Johnson, corner from Central Florida. He was recruited by Torian Gray, the DB coach here at South Carolina, out of high school. Had scheduled an official visit to Columbia at one point. Started 4 games this past year, played in all 12. 6'1", 180, so, Torian Gray likes corners over 6 feet. That's just some of the people in the portal. One other one, Josiah Trotter at West Virginia, linebacker, has 3 years of eligibility left. A lot of folks are going to chase Trotter because of the eligibility. Considered the number 4 linebacker in the portal by a couple different services. That's kind of some of the stuff going on in the portal. Another one, because we're talking about edge pass rusher now, because we've seen the light with Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart coming off the edge, just debilitating quarterbacks. Nate Johnson, edge from Appalachian State. 2 years ago, Johnson had 7.5 sacks, 8.5 tackles for loss. This past season, production dropped down a ton to 2.5 sacks. But obviously there's potential there. There's 2 years of eligibility. So keep Nate Johnson maybe on your radar. So that's some of the stuff going on with the Transfer portal target watch list from our folks at Gamecock Central. Okay. So Mark Gastineau has had a beef with Brett Favre for a long time. Michael Strahan broke Mark Gastineau's sack record back in the day against the Green Bay Packers. If you ever watched the highlight, Brett Favre, I believe it was play action, and Favre went to roll to his right. Strahan was right there, beat the block of the tackle, and Favre just kind of crumbled, and Strahan fell on him and got the sack. A lot of people think Favre did his buddy a solid. Strahan. That's what Mark Gastineau obviously thinks. Gastineau has not been happy with Favre for a long time, so Gastineau is doing a trade show. Card show, trade show. Finds out Brett Favre is going to be there. Walks up to Favre to say hi and to get his beef out in the open with Favre. And here's how it went down. Pretty interesting.
I thought we met a long time ago. At least I saw you.
Right.
How you doing?
When you fell down for him. I'm going to get my sack back. I'm going to get my sack back, dude.
You probably would hurt me.
Well, I don't care. You hurt me. You hurt me. You hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
You really hurt me. You hurt me, Brett.
We got to get back to this, Brett. I'm sorry.
Okay. If you watch this, it's part of a reality show or a documentary, and Gastineau is the one pushing this. He's mic'd up. He's talking, in between this whole thing. And obviously, this happened a long time ago, years and years ago. Late 90s, if my memory serves me. And Gastineau's he's still bitter. He thinks Favre fell down on purpose for Strahan to get the sack to break Gastineau's record. And I understand you take pride in that record. I totally understand. And in your mind, seeing that sack that broke your record, you're like, really? That looks and smells weird. But to let it eat at you for all these years, you would think and hope Mark Gastineau has more going on in his life to where that sack record's a great part of his life, but it doesn't define his life, right? But it feels like watching, I only watched a little bit of this, it defined Mark Gastineau's life. And he can't get over the fact he doesn't have that record anymore. And that's sad. It is. It's sad. To watch this back and forth with Favre was sad. Favre's like, yeah, I met you before. Yeah, I want my sack back. What? The hell are you talking about? You hurt me, dude. Okay, all right. But all these years later, it's just sad because Mark Gastineau, it feels like his whole life was defined by having that record. And it should be defined by more things, like your family and your friendships and, how you define your life as a human being, not that I have a sack record. Sad. It's just really sad. And that's what the little bit I watched of it, I just was like, wow, man, that's pathetic. Just really pathetic. All right. Nick Sirianni, the head coach of the Eagles, was asked on WIP in Philly about this whole deal going down with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. If you haven't heard, after the victory over Carolina, Panthers almost won the game. They've been playing better. So is Bryce Young. But after the game, A.J. Brown was asked about what they could do better on offense, and Brown basically like passing the football. Jalen Hurts was asked about it, and he just didn't have a comment. Brown was like, we got to get on the same page. Hurts was just a very, very one-word answer on it. And then Brandon Graham, one of the defensive captains and leaders, said these two guys are letting personal problems get in the way of business, which caused a lot of craziness. Then Brandon Graham apologized and said, no, I misunderstood. I think someone got a hold of Brandon Graham and said, hey, dude, what are you doing? Don't be laying the family laundry out in the road. Something's going on. Nick's there in the whole situation and gives his 2 cents on what's going on with the Eagles and their two offensive playmakers?
I think what again, there's going to be speculation of what things look like because you guys don't have let's be honest, you guys don't have all the information.
Sure.
Right? Yep. You don't get to see it on a daily basis. All I can judge is on, and this is very similar to, when people are asking me about is judge what you see. Like I have more information. I see them every single day. I see what's going on in the building. And so you just have to me, we know what there's going to be noise, and I get, and I obviously get it, just based off of what's happened here in the last couple of days. But I go on my daily relationships with these guys, with myself. I go on the daily relationships that I see every single day.
I mean, Sirianni says it over and over again. Look, man, I see it every day. Okay, that's fine. And, you don't have all the information. Well, no, the media doesn't, because the media didn't go chasing this. Now, the reporter, and if the reporter knew something, who asked a question to A.J. Brown about the offense, or maybe the reporter saw this cuts of A.J. Brown on the sideline looking unhappy, and he said, well, maybe Brown's unhappy because he's not getting the ball. I will ask a question about the offense and see where it goes. That's just good reporting. But A.J. Brown opened this door. Jalen Hurts opened this door. Brandon Graham opened this door. So, yeah, the information was brought to us by these people. And look, if the Eagles are winning, none of this matters. But if this team starts going sideways, this will be something that comes out in the open. All right, halftime show. Terry Ford, appreciate you hanging out as we go football in the 1 o'clock hour. Sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. (803) 404-6100 Firehouse Sub text line. Quick question on the text line. What is Shane Beamer's connection with Mike Shula? I'm sure they're sons of coaches. They've probably running over each other's path over the years. They're both in the SEC. Shane was in the SEC as a young coach when Mike Shula was at Alabama as the head coach. I'm sure they crossed paths during SEC stuff. And, just kind of know each other on the vine as well. And, Mike Shula, it's interesting because he had started to become an analyst, in different franchises. That's what he did in Buffalo. He was an offensive analyst when he worked with Josh Allen. And so coming to South Carolina, again, now the senior offensive analyst, and now the analyst can work on the field with players. The rules have changed. So, Shula getting more involved and eventually coming back to being a coordinator, which it's been a minute for Mike Shula. But he's done it many places in the NFL, and obviously, he was running it was his offense at Alabama. We had a caller earlier, a Bama fan, who said the one thing about Shula was when he was at Alabama, he would get conservative. Now, again, it's tough to gauge a guy at Alabama all those years ago to who he is now. I remember at times in the NFL there was talk of how he could bend conservative at times. But again, Cam Newton, he wasn't conservative. That offense, that was the thing with Cam. Josh Allen, you never, ever, ever look at the Bills and say that's a conservative offense. So Mike Shula has been around offenses that aren't conservative over the years, and we're just hoping that, obviously, offensive football is different now than when Mike Shula was the head coach at Alabama. So hopefully, we won't be sitting around next year going, man, they got really conservative. Why do they get so conservative? Because you got to be aggressive today in football, whether it's the NFL, college football, wherever. You got to be aggressive on offense. We talk about it all the time on the show. Field goals, you kick too many field goals, that'll get you beat in today's football. Again, it's better than 0 points, but it's about touchdowns, man. You got to be aggressive. With your play calling, your offensive system, you got to be aggressive. There's a line, we talk about it a lot. There's a line between aggressive and reckless. You got to be aggressive. Appreciate the text on Firehouse Sub text line 803-404-6100. All right, Field Yates has put out his mock draft, has Shedeur Sanders as the number 1 overall pick by the Giants. Number 2, Cam Ward, because, quarterbacks are always overvalued in the draft, going to Vegas because God knows the Raiders need a quarterback. And the Giants do as well. These first two are interesting because, Deion Sanders is going to be quite involved, and he said it, about where his son ends up playing in the NFL or ends up getting drafted. We'll see how that goes if the Giants do get the number 1 pick overall. Vegas at number 2 getting Cam Ward. It's tough to evaluate Antonio Pierce, the head coach, because they haven't had a real quarterback this past year. I'm sorry, no offense to Gardner Minshew. I love Uncle Rico, but he's not a starting quarterback in the NFL. Neither is Aiden O'Connell. Travis Hunter would go number 3 to New England in this mock draft. Abdul Carter, edge from Penn State, will go to the Panthers at 4. Kelvin Banks, offensive tackle, Texas to Cleveland at 5. Browns used to have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, but it is kind of like it started to fall apart here in the last couple of years. We will skim all the way down, though, because this is where it gets interesting. Number 26, the Green Bay Packers. And according to Field Yates mock draft, the Green Bay Packers, with the 26th selection, take Kyle Kennard, edge pass rusher, South Carolina. Now, that'd be great if that happens. I looked at Kyle Kennard as a guy, probably a second-round pick. I've seen some things where he's been put in the top, 50, but between 40 and 50. But if Kyle Kennard got drafted in the bottom of the first round, hey, that'd be phenomenal for Kennard. And, of course, for South Carolina. But here, Kyle Kennard, edge at 26 for the Green Bay Packers. So that's just a mock draft from Field Yates. It's on ESPN.com if you want to check that out. So very interesting. Again, quarterbacks. This is not a quarterback draft class as good as the last one. And, Cam Ward didn't like his draft stock or draft status last year, and that's why he stayed in college to try to, improve his draft position, and he will go in the first round. Now, is that because he's now a first-round graded quarterback, or is that because, it's not as good of a NFL quarterback draft as we've seen in past years? So because quarterbacks are taking the first round, is Cam Ward kind of getting upped in his stock? So I will see. We'll see. All right, what's trending at 2? Elijah's going to jump in here and do that for me. Coming up next here on the Halftime Show on the Game.
Final hour of the halftime show starts right now. I'm Elijah Campbell filling in for Terry Ford for these next couple segments. Well, he takes care of some of the boss work. Stuff he gets actually paid to do. But I can occupy the space between now and then. He'll come back at 2:30. We'll do greatest day in the history of the world and then get you ready to listen to me and Jay speak for 3 more hours from 3 to 6. But what's trending at 2 right now, we'll start local. We'll start here. Then that's the news that it's going to be Mike Shula as the offensive coordinator for South Carolina after Dowell Loggins departs and leaves to be the head coach at Appalachian State. Mike Shula joined the staff this year, 2024. The very beginning to be an analyst, and of course now in college football, analysts have more of a role, allowed to have more of a coaching role. It used to be they could just, watch film and break stuff down, but he's actually been able to be on the field this year and help with the development of Lenora Sellers. And when you look at even Dowell Loggins' job that he did for the team this year, beyond play calling, the thing that I think that would have made Dowell just the most attractive option for a school like Appalachian State is that development of Lenora Sellers. I mean, very clearly you saw from the game in August against Old Dominion all the way up to putting the team on his back in wins against Missouri and Clemson at the end of the year, it became very evident that Lenora Sellers got significantly better. There were some struggles along the way. That win against Old Dominion that I alluded to wasn't the sexiest game in terms of getting a win against a group of 5 opponent at home, but they got the win, and he was able to slowly build on that. You saw the flashes of what he could do in the first half against LSU with that 75-yard touchdown. You saw him help build a 17-point lead and put them in position to win that game, and I firmly believe now that if Lenora Sellers gets to play in that second half against LSU, they beat LSU and do it to the point where it doesn't matter what is called or not called in the fourth quarter of that game. I think Lenora Sellers not being able to play was the biggest blow that they had because he was dealing. And then he had to miss the Akron game. Everybody played poorly against Ole Miss. And then after that Ole Miss loss was when you saw Lenore's really take step by step a development to get him to where he became at the end of the year, where he's winning you games. Again, the 300-plus yards against Missouri won them the Missouri game, especially with engineering a drive with a minute left after Missouri scores a go-ahead touchdown to win them that game. And then against Clemson, we saw what he did by putting the team on his back, breaking out of the pocket, and scoring rushing touchdowns in spectacular fashion. That development was, I believe, a true team effort with Lenoris, obviously, Dowell Loggins, and Mike Shula. And you'd hear Dowell Loggins talk in press conferences this year, there was a whole lot of referring to the work that they all did together to help with that progression. And Mike Shula's done a really good job of coaching quarterbacks throughout his career. At SEC Media Days back in Dallas, which feels like forever ago now, but back in July, Shane Beamer was asked about adding Mike Shula to the staff just as an analyst, as an offensive analyst, right? What this was going to bring to this team. This is what he was asked back in July. Here was his answer.
I mentioned with Coach Shula, he had worked with Cam Newton in Carolina, and then he had worked with Josh Allen most recently with the Buffalo Bills. And, regardless of where Coach Shula had been or who he had most recently worked with, I would have wanted to bring him on our staff, period. I mean, he was the head coach at Alabama when I was an assistant coach at Mississippi State, and have known him for a long time. Obviously, we're both sons of coaches. No one has won more games in the NFL than his dad. So just an immense amount of respect for him as a player and him as a coach in college, and then him as a person. But then when you start talking about bringing him in and you look at his background and what he was able to do with Cam Newton and the Panthers when they went to the Super Bowl, what some of his work with Josh Allen and what Buffalo has done with Josh Allen, being a big body that can run and throw both. He's been great. Been a guy that's helped Al Loggins in our offensive staff room a lot. You know, you're talking about a guy that has called plays in the SEC and called plays in the NFL in his career. So he's been a welcome addition to our staff and brings a lot of great ideas to the staff as well.
Brought a lot of great ideas and really helped with the development of Lenora Sellers. And I think that's one of the biggest positives of adding Mike Shula as the offensive coordinator is, the continuity. Continuity matters. And sometimes there's a little bit of a learning curve when you bring in a new coordinator, right? I mean, unfortunately for Marcus Satterfield, that hasn't really picked up anywhere else he's gone. He went to Nebraska and wasn't there for very long. But you saw, before they were able to pick it up at the end of the season, when they simplified a lot of things, they went through some serious learning curve. The offense was not great at the beginning of the 2022 season, at the beginning of the 2023 season. And obviously, the offensive line issues didn't help anything, but you saw there have to be an offensive adjustment throughout the year. A hindrance for you to be on offensive coordinator number 3 since 2022. I think the fact that Shula's been on this staff, has experience working with Lenoris, is a plus. And we made that our poll question of the day at 107.5 The Game, just to kind of get what your feel is on this. Is if that continuity matters of having him on the staff this year, getting to be in the film room with Lenoris, help maybe with the mechanics of his throwing motion, decision making, helping him get acclimated to life as a Division I quarterback, a starting SEC quarterback, and then seeing the growth that he actually displayed throughout the season. That's a plus. And Mike Shula is a guy who's known for working with quarterbacks, has a pretty solid track record. You heard Shane talk about his dad. His dad, Don Shula, is arguably the greatest coach in the history of the NFL. Nobody has won more games as a head coach in the history of the NFL than Don Shula. And I think that's a plus. He's got that lineage. I think that's why him and Shane probably understand each other really well, is because of that background. But if you look at the quarterbacks that have been coached by Mike Shula, and I went just back to 2000, right? You go back to 2000, he was the quarterbacks coach for the Dolphins, for Jay Fiedler. Jay Fiedler had some up and down seasons, but at the end of the day, those were offenses that were good enough to be 11-5 and be able to get them in to the playoffs. Or not the playoffs. I think they fell a game short. But they had a winning record, and the Miami Dolphins haven't had a lot of winning records since 2000. Then we went to college. He coached at Alabama. He was, known as the guy before Saban. And actually, while he was at Alabama in 2005, they won 10 games. They went 10-2. They won a Cotton Bowl. That was the year I vividly remember watching number 5 Florida come into Tuscaloosa and Alabama steamroll them 31-3. And when he was there, he helped develop Brody Croyle into a quarterback who threw for 2,500 yards and a 14-4 touchdown interception ratio in 2005, again, alluding to them shredding one of the better defenses in college football with Florida and beating them 31-3 in a nationally televised game. The next year, they, unfortunately for them, went 6-7. They fire him, and then Nick Saban's there forever and does what he did. But after that, he did go to Jacksonville. He coached David Garrard, who was a Pro Bowler in 2009. He was in Jacksonville. Mike Shula was as the quarterback's coach from 2007 to 2010. David Garrard was the starting quarterback there for all of those years, and I really overachieved as an NFL quarterback. And then, of course, he goes to Carolina. And then the experience that Shane alludes to in that clip is he's the quarterback's coach for the Panthers when they draft Cam Newton number 1 overall in the NFL draft. He's Cam's quarterback's coach for 2 years. And then he becomes the offensive coordinator. And then by the time you get to 2015, Cam Newton becomes an MVP. It's the number 1 rushing offense in the NFL. Top 10 in yards per attempt. They score a lot of points, a lot of style, a lot of flash. He optimizes what Cam Newton was. And what was a really fun NFL career, the best years you got from Cam Newton and the development you got from Cam Newton from rookie year in the NFL to ultimate MVP, taking a team to a Super Bowl, you got with Mike Shula either as the quarterback's coach those first 2 years up until the time he was his offensive coordinator and calling the plays. What is a comparison that we have made for Lenora Sellers. That we see that the ceiling for Lenora Sellers can be Cam Newton-ish. And I got to be careful drawing in modern quarterbacking position in college football. You might not have gotten any better than what Cam Newton was in 2010. But there's a lot of similar traits. When you saw Lenoris put the team on his back, escape pockets, run for long touchdowns, break 15 tackles in a game against Clemson, and be able to get that win in Death Valley the way he did, sometimes it can liken you back to those images of Cam Newton's Heisman season. But Mike Shula was one of those guys that was able to help turn Cam. Again, if you look at that 2015 Carolina Panthers offense, they didn't have a lot of stars at the receiver position. That team wasn't known for having great receivers, right? I think Devin Funchess might have been the leading receiver as a wide receiver on that team. Now, Greg Olson at tight end, fantastic pass catcher and a fantastic player. But that team was mostly Cam Newton making magic happen. And Mike Shula has experience calling an offense where that type of quarterback is your leader and your best player. That gives me excitement. That gives me reason to be optimistic that Mike Shula moving into this role, even at the college game where it's different than the NFL, it makes me optimistic that they can pick up right where they left off. And I'm hoping, as much as I loved Al Loggins and I love what he did this season, as good as he's been, I would really like to see Mike Shula be the play caller for the bowl game against Illinois, just so we can maybe get a little bit of a glimpse as to what he's like as a college play caller. Because we haven't seen him call plays in college since 2006. Simulation. Sometimes you'll read different news headlines and you'll get confused about the stuff you hear, and every day you might think, well, we live in a simulation, but there's no further proof that we live in a Matrix S simulation than the news that broke out at Chapel Hill today. I'll tell you what that is when the halftime show continues. The saying that truth is sometimes stranger than fiction, I believe, is 1,000% accurate. Sometimes you hear something that you just have to see to believe. And, last week, I remember when we had Alan Cole and Jack Veltri on the postgame show with me, hanging out for a little bit to end the week, and we were talking about potential coaching changes in the world of college football, and the name Bill Belichick in North Carolina came up because there was reports that they were having a meeting, that they had an interview, and that maybe it went pretty well. But the idea that Bill Belichick would take the North Carolina job always kind of felt out there, hyperbolic. I mean, this is the same guy that absolutely refused to take questions in a press conference setting when asked about a previous game and would just mumble, "We're on to Cincinnati." A man who absolutely hated dealing with the media. Even though as an NFL head coach, you don't do anywhere near as much media stuff as you do in college, would take a college football job. Now, maybe he just really wants a new challenge. Look, he has coached in the NFL his entire coaching career. His first coaching gig was as a special assistant with the Baltimore Colts in 1975. He was in the NFL his entire career since, and this is his first dip into the college game. I have read, and there's been some reports, that he was close to the Washington program this past year because his son is the defensive coordinator. So he got a little bit of time to be able to be around a college program, know the ins and outs. And in modern college football now, it does require knowing the ins and outs more than ever because the game's changed so much. The game has changed significantly from here in 2024 than what it was even in 2014. The things you deal with as a college football coach now are dramatically different. But maybe the idea of getting to be a head coach and a GM, which is kind of something he was in New England, where he was responsible for drafting players, evaluating talent, and then coaching them and putting them in the best position to succeed, something that he did, obviously, very well when you win 6 Super Bowls. One of the greatest coaches in the history of the NFL. But college is a lot different. You think he was grumpy taking questions in a press conference? How grumpy is he going to be for a coach's call-in show? Do you think somebody for a coach's call-in show is going to call in and ask him a question? He's going to mumble to him, "Oh, we're on to Wake Forest." You have to do so much more politicking. It's what I like to call it, politicking in college football. When you're a college football coach, a head coach at it, in the South, you are constantly not just coaching football, not just recruiting, but trying to win public favor. Right? It's almost like you are running for office. You've got to be able to work a room. It's not necessarily a requirement, but you kind of have to do a lot more of those type of things, more, dare I say, political type stuff, because you are working within the framework of public institutions, like a university, like the University of North Carolina. It's just weird. It's just a match. I'm not saying that will or won't work. I doubt it works. I actually think this will go down in a blaze of glory. Not good. I do find it very ironic that North Carolina decided to move on from Mack Brown, despite having some of the more interesting teams that the University of North Carolina has ever had, because of his age. Mack Brown is 73 years old. Bill Belichick is 72. So I guess technically on paper, you got younger with this hire. Mission accomplished, I guess. It almost feels lazy, right? It almost felt like a room full of suits sat around and said, "Hey, we should get a good coach. We got rid of Mack. We should get a really good football coach. How about Bill Belichick? I watch the NFL on Sundays. How about we get Bill Belichick? Oh, that's great. He won 6 Super Bowls. Maybe he can lead us to a Super Bowl." That's kind of what it feels like, right? I know John Summerall took his name out of contention, the head coach over at Tulane, which good for Tulane, because they would have to be on head coach number 3 in 3 years. Talk about not having a lot of continuity. And then it was reported that they reached out to Matt Campbell at Iowa State, and Matt Campbell declined an interview. He turned down a opportunity to get the North Carolina job. Don't necessarily blame him because North Carolina is in an interesting spot, right? If they invest the money that they have into football, they can be pretty good. They've shown they can bring in good talent. Mack Brown brought in good talent. Bringing in good talent wasn't the problem the last 3 or 4 years. It's been not falling apart in October and November. It's not being the ACC version of Texas A&M where you dazzle in September and drool on yourself in the back half of the season. Because that's kind of what's happened to North Carolina under Mack Brown the last few years, especially in 2023 when they had Drake May, and then the years before that when Sam Howell was the quarterback. They had two guys that were legit NFL quarterbacks with offensive weapons that were legit offensive weapons. They've put in a couple of guys in Javonte Williams and Michael Carter who are still in the NFL and still playing pretty well. They still had some receivers. Josh Downs, who was one of the leading receivers for the Indianapolis Colts, had him as well. They had offenses that were game changer and did nothing with them. It's a hard place to win, but you can bring talent there. But do I really think Bill Belichick is up for making public appearances all the time and doing the stuff that college football coaches have to do that NFL coaches simply don't? I don't think he minds having to go out and try to find a diamond in the rough talent-wise from any type of high school in the state of North Carolina, which is just loaded with high school football talent. I think he might enjoy that. I don't know Bill Belichick, but he's a football guy. That might be the part of the job that is really attractive to him. But how is he going to react if an 18-year-old recruit who he's trying to land is demanding more money because Miami is offering him like $700,000? He's going to have to deal with that. It's different than in the NFL where you negotiate with agents. There's a salary cap, and finding good deals on players and finding bargain bin type fines is a little different than it is in high school, in college. It's a significantly different game. And if he got annoyed at doing certain press conferences, I don't know exactly how much he is going to enjoy handling NIL or handling a lot of the politicking that is required of college football coaches, of having to win the favor of donors, right? In the NFL, the owner is who is providing you money, and the business itself is providing you the money. Well, now you have to fundraise a little bit. You have to do things that are fundraiser events. You have to get people enthused about your product because in college sports right now with the NIL model, it's the fans mostly subsidizing these programs. And if you don't have a lot of enthusiasm, the money's not going to come in. You're not going to get the players you want. And an already hard job at North Carolina is even harder. Not saying Bill Belichick can't succeed at North Carolina, because I think his name will draw talent. His name will draw intrigue. But I am highly skeptical of whether or not he wants to actually do the stuff required of a college football coach. That remains to be seen. And I'm highly skeptical as to how the actual North Carolina head football coaching search went behind closed doors. Because if your hire was as unimaginative as to, say, snag a 72-year-old former NFL coach out of retirement, as opposed to maybe other head coaches that would be interested in your job, I'm curious to see exactly what type of line of logic led to making this decision. Are they hiring Bill Belichick because they really think the guy is the best for the job? Or is he one of the only ones right now that are actually willing to take it? We'll see. Time will tell. What's today? It's December 11th. Wednesday, December 11th. In some circles, it's known as the greatest day in the history of the world. Terry Ford returns to the studio now, and he'll tell you why today is the greatest day in the history of the world when we return here in the halftime show on the Game.
Terry Ford, Elijah Campbell hanging out with us here on the Halftime Show. Appreciate you making sure everybody knew what was trending at 2. Thank you, man.
Hey,
nice work.
Somebody has to do it.
Real quick, the Belichick thing you were talking about. Here's the angle that the first thing I thought of, and I haven't really yapped about it much on this show. It almost tells me that Bill is getting himself ready for the idea that the NFL jobs ain't coming. Because not to be mean, if you're Bill Belichick and you are 4 seasons roughly away from breaking Don Shula's all-time win record, and you're 2 years old. So he's younger than Mac Brown, so he'd be going younger.
I was going to say, they do technically get younger with the hire.
They get younger.
Yes.
Why would you walk away from the NFL to come deal with today's world of college football? Unless you don't think you can get a gig in the NFL.
Yeah.
Just something to think about.
He really want to coach. I think he does really want to get back into coaching.
So do I. That's why I think that maybe he's not seeing the lay of the land in the back channels of the NFL where you find out what's up. Maybe his agent isn't getting the love that they thought maybe they would get, because Bill's everywhere, right? He's with, what better way to make you look hip and cool than go hang out with McAfee? Yeah. Hit the younger demo, right? Say, look at me. I'm the hoodie. I've got a sense of humor. I actually smile. I shower every now and then. Look at me. I'm going out with a girl, 50 years younger than me. I'm a cool dude.
Who might be attending the University of North Carolina.
Exactly. Maybe that's why he wants to coach there, because she's going to be a student. And so, he's on with, the Mannings. He's got his own podcast. He's everywhere. Because the thought was, we're going to prop you out in the media, Bill. We're going to reinvent your image as you're not an old sourpuss who the game is passing by. You still are sharp and with it, and you can evolve and blah, blah, blah. So maybe it's not working as well in the back channels that they were hoping. So maybe he's setting himself up for if he can't get an NFL gig, or maybe he's not hearing the words that, Bill, we think you'll get back in the league at the end of the year. Maybe that's why Bill's doing all this. I don't know. It's a little weird.
Yeah,
it's a little weird.
It's not a personality fit for him, right?
Can you see Bill Cruton? Can you see Bill in a living room?
Could you see Bill's face when an 18-year-old recruit says, "Hey, I need $700K, or else I'll go to Miami because they're offering me that"?
Or this one, "Hey, old school. You got a minute? Hey, Gramps." I don't know. I just wanted to your point, because you were talking about it, and I was like, yeah, my thought is, if Bill had a pretty good idea, he's definitely getting back in the NFL as a coach in the next season, this wouldn't be going on, I don't think.
Could you imagine the look on Bill's face whenever his star wide receiver wants him to turn on Lil Durk or some music during practice? And the best part is, Terry, you don't know if I made that name up or if that's a real artist or not.
You know what?
You don't.
I like the name.
You don't.
It could be Lil Wayne, Lil Durk, Little Bill Gunner. Anyway, man, I'm in. I know. All I know is what my kids listen to now. That's all I got. My youngest loves Kendrick Lamar. So I've heard a lot of Kendrick Lamar. And one thing I'll say about that, as I plug my headphones back in, I look at him and he'll go, "Dad, what do you think of that song?" I go, "That's really cool. You're not going to play that for your mom, right?"
You make sure he doesn't play
it. He goes, "No, Dad, I wouldn't." Say, "Good. Don't play that for your mom." All right, greatest day in the history of the world. You'll like this one. We always like to deep dive on something going back in the old days. 1946. The NBA-ish. The Chicago Stags and the Cleveland Rebels play an experimental game featuring 15-minute quarters instead of 12. Stags beat the Rebels 88-70. 60 minutes of basketball could only combine for 158 points.
Wow. Did you know last night Arkansas scored 66 points in a 20-minute span?
Yeah. And
that almost would have been greater than that entire total.
So I decided to deep dive on the Chicago Stags, because the Cleveland Rebels were around for a year and went away.
Not to be confused with the Berkeley Stags here in the state of South Carolina.
Exactly. All right, so the Stags started off in 46-47, along with the iconic NBA brands like the St. Louis Bombers. And, of course, what's my other favorite in here? There's another good one in here. The Sheboygan Redskins.
The Sheboygan Redskins.
Sheboygan actually had a professional basketball team. Well, the Stags were around for starting 1946. Then in 1950, Abe Saperstein bought them. Name ring a bell?
Abe Saperstein.
He owned the Harlem Globetrotters. So Abe had this great idea. He's going to play doubleheaders. Globetrotters in one game, Stags in the second game. Or Stags in the first game, Globetrotters in the second game. So he's buying the team. He's in on this whole idea of doubleheaders. And then the whole thing blows up. Abe wants his $20,000 deposit back. NBA and Abe have a little issue. So Abe's not the owner anymore. Eventually, the Stags go away. Along with the Anderson Packers, my favorite team, the Sheboygan group, the Waterloo Hawks. Yes, Waterloo had a professional basketball team.
I heard their defense gave Napoleon fits.
I was going to say, it's not that Waterloo.
No!
Napoleon did not fight in Waterloo, Iowa. Anyway. So that's what happened to the Chicago Stags. A very interesting little story. The Chicago Stags. Rochester Royals, who ended up being... Today, they are, I believe, the Sacramento Kings.
Yes, because that is where Oscar Robertson averaged his triple-double.
Yes, he did. And then they ended up becoming the Kansas City Omaha Kings. People don't know, if you've never been in that part of the country, Kansas City and Omaha, Nebraska aren't that far apart. Shockingly, they're not that far apart.
It just so happens to almost have a foot in 3 different states.
Kansas City is not that far from the Nebraska border. So Kansas City Omaha Kings is also... That was from Rochester, Kansas City, Omaha, eventually somehow ending up in Sacramento.
Where they have done nothing but thrive.
Yes. Almost went to the NBA Finals. Got close.
They're one Vlade Divac tap out to Robert Horry away.
Yes. All right, rest of the greatest day in the history of the world real quick. We've got some interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. You know I love pop-up ads. Have I told you how much I love pop-up ads?
That's right. Well, here's the thing. Because we've been hearing like Christmas music so frequently just in our everyday lives. I didn't know if that was playing from your computer or that's my brain summoning up.
It was playing from my computer.
Christmas music.
Joe DiMaggio on this day in 1951 announced his retirement from baseball. I think I've told this story before. I don't know if you've never been with me. DiMaggio, when he was had retired and he was coming to Old Timers Day and Old Timers games in New York, the word is that he would not show up unless he was guaranteed that when he was introduced, he'd be introduced as the greatest living ball player.
A really humble fellow.
Yeah, Joe DiMaggio loves some Joe DiMaggio.
I wish he took a little more credit for himself.
Joe DiMaggio loves some Joe DiMaggio.
You would think getting an unearned MVP in the 50s ahead of Ted Williams would have been enough.
Ted Williams. Well, isn't it interesting? The year DiMaggio beats Williams, Williams hits 400. DiMaggio has the 56-game hitting streak. That was all in the same season. And because Williams was so disliked by the media, because Williams did not have the greatest personality in the world, and DiMaggio was much more media-friendly, it's one of the other reasons. Plus, the Yankees always were better than the Red Sox. But yeah. Ted Williams hit 400, didn't win the MVP.
Yeah, it got robbed.
1941, I believe that was.
Yeah.
Back when I was a kid.
Yeah, it turns out, baseball writers in 1941 were unaware that there were more than 56 games that happened that season.
So baseball writers had as much prejudice back then as they do today.
Yeah.
Just putting it out there. This day in 1971, the Lakers set an NBA record, 21 straight wins by beating the Hawks. The team that had the record before them, the Milwaukee Bucks, with some guy named Lou Alcindor in 1970. Of course, L.A. went to make that 33 straight games before it was all said and done in 1971.
It turns out adding Wilt Chamberlain to a team that already has Elgin Baylor and Jerry West is a pretty interesting, pretty genius move.
Turned out you did okay.
Yeah, it turns out, just get Wilt Chamberlain on your already really good team, and then you're just going to win a lot of games in a row. Makes anybody look smart.
1981, former world heavyweight champion Muhammad Ali fought his final fight, his 61st career fight. And again, in 1981, he was a shell of his former self, obviously. Lost to Trevor Berbick in a unanimous decision. Muhammad Ali in his prime would have beat the fluid out of Trevor Berbick.
I love the careful word selection.
Yeah. I had a lot of words I wanted to use.
I could see the Baltimore coming out of it.
Yeah, it was close. 1985, Wayne Gretzky of the Edmonton Oilers registered 7 assists in a 12-9 victory of the Chicago Blackhawks.
How many of those came from behind the net?
Oh, he was watching him operate behind the net and just peppering passes to people. If you're a hockey dork and you've never seen it, go YouTube Wayne Gretzky. Just all he did, he'd go behind the net and just look for open dudes and just fire the puck.
He was so fast.
Phenomenal.
He would just get there faster than everybody, and then the rest of his teammates could crash the net. And he was always having an option coming close to the goaltender.
So good.
Delicious.
And by the way, on this day in 2021, Bryce Young wins the Heisman Trophy. By the way, playing much better in the last month for Carolina. Well, you sit a guy down for a little bit to learn and don't throw him into the fire. Sometimes they get a little bit better.
And sometimes you just play more football games, you'll get better.
You know what? I'm rooting for him just with all the garbage he's gone through.
Yeah.
I'm really rooting for him.
And how they're ready to throw him under the bus.
Yeah.
So quick.
Too bad they can't throw their owner under the bus. We'll be here all week. All right, greatest day in the history of the world on the halftime show. Firehouse Sub Text the Hour. We'll wrap this sucker up. Elijah Campbell hanging out with me, Terry Ford, halftime show right here on The Game. Time to check our Firehouse Subtext line. We have Jay Phillips here, the handoff, sponsored by Little Pigs, Alpine Road.
I just
Elijah's
saw the creepiest commercial I've ever seen, I think. And I've seen some creepy commercials. Those two ladies with a cat, and they're like all dressed up for Christmas, and there's something that they're feeding the cat, and the cat has this look, and then they have this look. And I'm like, you know what? No. Just wanted to let y'all know that really kind of just.
Did you stop looking? Is that what happened?
I couldn't help it. That's just it. It's like, watching a car accident. You're like, I don't know what I'm watching here, and then what they're trying to advertise.
What were they trying to advertise?
Well, again, some kind of cat thing, man.
Food?
Yeah, but it was like in a little tube. Like, there's like mix-ins, like you.
Okay.
It was like that size, and then the cat is sitting there like just. I don't know what the hell I just saw.
Sounds like Jay's afraid of cats.
Well, I think I'm afraid of the people that were giving that to the cat.
I think he's afraid of the old ladies.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
I know how I can scare Jay Phillips this Halloween.
Dress up like an old lady with a cat.
Dress up like a cat lady.
I can recruit one to come in here.
No, we've got one.
Scare you,
Dave. David Adair has become a cat lady.
Dave is a cat lady?
Well, Dave told the story on the air that, he's got his new place, right? So there's a little kitten that was outside of his patio or whatever. And so Dave's like, oh, that's a cute little kitten. I'll feed it, and then maybe my stepdaughter will adopt this little kitten for my granddaughter. So he went to feed the cat, right? You know what happened the next day? There were like 10 cats outside.
I was going to say either it's something bad or something worse.
So now you got 10 cats outside. He's feeding them all honey buns.
Wow, he must really like those things if he's giving up like all that capital. I mean, that man
the
loves
David
his
Adair honey bun collection. So now he's got
God.
cats all outside of his house, his apartment. So he's got little cat bowls everywhere, and he's feeding cats. David Adair is now a cat lady.
You know what? The post game show just became a solo for Elijah Campbell. I'm out. My mind is now. What are we going to talk about?
Dave dressed like a cat lady. Run that mental picture through both of your heads.
No, I just did. That's why I have to leave.
All right, we got a text on the Firehouse Subtext line.
Where's that hidden stash of bourbon?
I got it upstairs in my office. There's not much left these days.
I was going to say, you had it up in your office. Your mistake was telling me, and now there is.
Right.
All right, I'm sorry. Yes, let's do the things that are sponsored.
The text was about the schedule release.
Okay.
What would be the first? What SEC team do you want to see South Carolina play first in 2025, or do you care?
I don't care. I mean, for a long time, we got used to playing Georgia first around here in conference play. So I don't know that anybody around here is going to go like, oh, you're giving us X first, because it was, I would say, in the 32, 33 seasons now that Carolina's played SEC football, 20. I mean, we could count. I don't know. Elijah, you want to go do it real quick? At 20 of them, Georgia was the first game, so I don't care.
I just, like this year, what was it? Kentucky out the chute.
At Kentucky.
But there's been years, Kentucky's in November. The year before, Kentucky was in November.
I remember the ugliness of that Thursday night game against A&M, the first ever SEC Network game, and they came in here and scored 50-something points.
The other thing about this is that, because we know the schedule, it's just going to flop what we had this year. It's just home and road flops.
I mean, quite honestly, Terry, if I were them, what I would do is really just basically, in terms of where the fixture is, if you will, just flip it. Like, no need to try to massage it for whatever. Just flip it.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to flip venues anyway. So just, maybe, you know what I'm saying?
It's an interesting text because off the top of my head, what will be the most compelling opponent to start next year with?
Well, hosting Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, getting Alabama here. Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
That's if you want to know who's on your schedule and what the hosting Alabama.
And Williams-Brice would be hopping for a Bama game, especially after last year losing that game by 2 points.
Yeah.
Feeling like, you were kind of getting hosed in this college football playoff thing and all this other stuff. That would be the most compelling game.
You're going to get to host Oklahoma, so that's cool.
That's cool.
And I don't want people getting lulled into a false sense of security about Oklahoma football.
No, I agree with you 100% on that. You and I talked about this when they were coming in the league, and we talked about in the offseason, just because the upheaval at quarterback made you pause on Oklahoma this year because of what was going on there. And your question mark on Brent Venables. But make no mistake, before this is all said and done, Oklahoma's going to be Oklahoma
They'll be
again.
Fine. They're going to be fine.
It wasn't this year. It might not even be next year.
It might not.
But I'll tell you, it will happen.
It will.
They were good for 50 or 60 years, except for the John Blake, Howard Schnellenberger blip. You want to know where your bourbon was? It was with Schnellenberger. But they will be good again because we looked it up one day, Tyler and I. The only other team that's been consistently better over 50, 60, 70 years is Ohio State.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's how good Oklahoma football is. They will be fine before it's all said and done.
Georgia had their little dip for a couple of years, right? And then so they're right there too. But yeah, I mean, so the most compelling matchup, I mean, just based on who's on your schedule is, would be hosting Alabama. But I don't know that Alabama says, oh God, we got to go to South Carolina first. They don't want that.
No.
They're
too busy trying to figure out what just happened to them.
Yeah.
They lost 3 games. I mean, they're.
Did they play Vanderbilt this year?
No, did they?
They might have.
Alabama?
Yeah.
Does Vanderbilt play football?
I mean, if they play Vanderbilt, that's an easy Alabama win.
Sure.
They'd never lose to Vanderbilt,
Surely
would
that
they?
wasn't one of the 3.
That can't be what
they couldn't have
And if
lost
they
to
did, that
Vanderbilt.
can't be what have kept
Nick
them out of the
Saban wouldn't
playoff.
lose to us, right? Nick Saban's not there anymore.
No.
My bad. Post-game show's coming up.
Langston.
All right, good deal. Thank you, Elijah.